Now that I have the calipers rebuilt on this 1970 Mercedes, it's time to continue on with the brake job and replace the failed flexible brake hoses, as well as the brake pads and some of the brake hardware. I've got some brand new anti-rattle springs and pins, since the ones on the car were riveted at this particular point and rusted and broke off. And going to go with some EBC brake pads, which I tend to prefer. You could get Pagid or Textar, any one of those kinds of pads, because they have this break-in coating on there, which is a slightly abrasive coating to help the pads bed in and also clean the rotor and prepare it for the new type of friction material. As you can see, the car has been sitting for a while and the rotors have a little bit of corrosion on there, but I've cleaned them up a little bit with some steel wool. But these kinds of pads will finish the job, make those rotors like new. And then we have the new flexible brake lines. I've got the old one pulled off. If you guys remember from last time, this line's completely collapsed, and I've got its replacement right here. And this is the driver's side. And I'm going to go ahead and replace the line on the passenger side as well too, even though it doesn't appear to be bad. I'm going to go ahead and replace them all. And I'll show you the difference between the old one and the new one, and what's going on and why I've got to replace it. We're going to try to run some compressed air through there, and I'll show you what I mean. So here's what the air sounds like with nothing on it. And we'll go ahead and run that through this hose, the old hose. Completely collapsed inside, no flow whatsoever. And now we'll try the new hose. So that right there is the root of the problem. There was no fluid flow in this old hose, which from the looks of it actually appears to be the OEM ATE hose. The camera will focus sometime in the next couple of years. And it's been collapsed for some time, I don't know for how long. And that allowed the pistons and the caliper just to kind of stay frozen there for years and years and years probably, and they just got locked up. A lot of times, because there's a lot of leverage in the brake system, a lot of hydraulic pressure, it kind of acts as a hydraulic diode. You know, fluid goes in one way but cannot return back the other way. You've got much more pressure going out by pressing the brake pedal than you do by the slight imperfections in the rotor pushing the piston back in to force the fluid back up. And that's sometimes what could happen, is that you can have fluid go in this direction and apply clamping force against the rotor, and the pistons will stay there because it can't return, or the pistons can actually seize up in their bores like they did in this case and basically cause the same problem. And I'm going to go ahead. The new hose is actually also ATE. They call ATE Classic. Whenever I work on the older cars especially, I try to keep everything as original as I possibly can. And what came on the car is ATE, so what's going back on the car is ATE. So this line is basically very simple. Going to, if I can get under here, goes into a T up there from that end, and then it's going to go to that brake fitting right there with that special clamp on it. So basically the procedure is very simple. It'll take two hands and it's not very light under here, but you basically get the idea. You screw it in to that T on the body and then go ahead and run this down into the other end, and that's basically all there is to the job. And then I'll go ahead and do the passenger side. Okay, there's what the finished product looks like. Got the brake line all torqued down into the T and making sure that T didn't twist at all. And now we'll go back. And that's what this end looks like on the driver's side. You've got this spring here that kind of compresses down as you torque this fastener into the brake line here, and it's kind of shiny everywhere because I sprayed it with the metal protector that I like to use to keep these threads from getting corroded so I can replace these lines in the future. So on this particular car, it's a mark of simplicity, replacing all these brake lines. There's not much to it. You need an 11 millimeter flare nut wrench on the 14 millimeter flare nut wrench on this side, and an 11 millimeter flare wrench on that side for the smaller fastener. So the next thing we have to do is replace this other brake line here, which is a lot shorter. Same basic concept there. And these are the kinds of wrenches I'm talking about, these flare nut wrenches that allow you to get on as many sides of the nut or bolt as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that line and go in with the new one. Okay, now the brake line, or the new brake line for the passenger side, is in and sprayed down with the metal protector. All the fasteners are torqued down like they should be. And now it's time to go in with the new brake pads. I've got some new hardware here. You can see what happened to the old spring. It was our anti-rattle clip. It was riveted in, and that rivet broke off long ago. So that's junk. This new one is all a one-piece design. And the brake pads are very easy to put in. We got the pistons and the calipers pushed all the way back from the rebuild job the other day. Make sure that rotor is square. And if you guys want to know the part number for the pads I'm using for your Mercedes, there it is. And the European pads are really nice because it has this special certification on there that lets you know that these pads are genuine pads that meet OEM specifications. They're not counterfeit or below standard pads. I think it's R90 certification. So you want to have these kinds of pads for your European vehicle. And I've got the caliper all cleaned out where the pads slide in. So the pads basically just go in like this. And then we'll get another one. Just like that. And then the anti-rattle clip will go in there. Then you have these retaining pins that go on the back side. And this is hard to do with one hand. And basically what you'll do from this point onward is drive the other pin in there. You got to push this down and then dry these pins in with a hammer, and then you're done with the brake job. That's going to take 2 hands, so I'll go ahead and do that and show you guys the result. Okay, now the brake pads are installed on both sides. It's just a simple matter of driving these pins all the way through, and you want to make sure that the head of the pin is flush with the caliper on this side, and that they're driven in evenly, so that there's no chance of them coming out, and that they go under the, that the spring goes behind the pins, so there's some tension on these pads. You can try to move the pad back and forth. A little bit of movement there. That tends to hold the pads forward. So, with the new brake lines installed in the back, and rebuilt calipers, and new brake linings, new parking brake shoes, inner and outer axle seals, this vehicle is ready to, I'm getting kind of excited. It's almost time to get this thing back on the road again. The next step is going to be to bleed the brake system, at least in the back, and that'll let me drive the car enough to test out all the work I've done back here, check for leaks. There's going to be 6 points for leaks totally on the back of the car. You have a leak point here, which is 1, leak point there, which is 2, and then a leak point up here, which would be 3, and same thing for the other side. So I want to make sure before I go anywhere that I put the system under like a little bit of a stress test with pressure and check for leaks and everything, and then also bed the pads in, and I'll be able to replace the brake lines on the front of the car, and I'll try to go ahead and bleed the brakes sometime in the next few days here, and try to video that. I've got a couple of examples of brake bleeding on my channel with the Ford F-250 and the what was the Ford Crown Victoria. So I may or may not make a video doing that of this, but I probably will anyway. So anyway, just wanted to show how these pads get put in, and show some progress on the car. And the next video would be to bleed the brakes and see this thing get back on the road.